Okay, I am picking it up on page 263 in the paperback book, away at the bottom. Winston was struck, as he had been struck before, by the tiredness of O'Brien's face. It was strong and fleshy and brutal. It was full of intelligence and a sort of controlled passion before which he felt himself helpless, but it was tired. There were pouches under the eyes, the skin sagged from the cheekbones. O'Brien leaned over him, deliberately bringing the worn face nearer. "You're thinking," he said, "that my face is old and tired. You're thinking that I talk of power, and yet I am not even able to prevent the decay of my own body. Can you not understand, Winston, that the individual is only a cell? The wariness of the cell is the vigor of the organism. Do you die when you cut your fingernails?" That's a weird statement. So what does that mean? Do you die when you cut your fingernails? I think O'Brien is saying each individual person in the party is so insignificant that it doesn't matter that they will grow old and die. He's like, I am just the fingernail that you cut off. In terms of like, if the party is like a body, he's like, I'm just a fingernail. It doesn't matter about me that I can't control my own weariness and decay, because I am a fingernail that will be cut off and I will be whisked away, and that is fine. He turned away from the bed and began strolling up and down, one hand in his pocket. "We are the priests of power," he said. "God is power. But at present, power is only a word so far as you're concerned. It is time for you to gather some idea of what power means. The first thing you must realize is that power is collective. The individual only has power insofar as he ceases to be an individual. You know the party slogan, freedom is slavery. Has it ever occurred to you that it is reversible? Slavery is freedom. Alone, free, the human being is always defeated. It must be so, because every human being is doomed to die, which is the greatest of all failures. But if he can make complete, utter submission, if he can escape from his identity, if he can emerge himself in the party so that he is the party, then he is all-powerful and immortal. The second thing for you to realize is that power is power over human beings, over the body, but above all, over the mind. Power over matter, external reality, as you would call it, is not important. Already, our control over matter is absolute." That was crazy. So he's essentially saying that people always die. He said, because every human being is doomed to die, that is the greatest of all failures. But if you as a person can kind of give up your own individual identity and assume the identity of the party, then because the party is never dead, because it lives on in other people, you will effectively never die, because you're not yourself anymore. You are just part of the party. And then he says, and this is what we've been reiterating a lot, is that you don't just want power over the physical aspect, you want power over people's minds. Because if you have power over people's minds, you have power over this external reality that Winston is talking about. And I think that's that. We'll go back to when Winston was originally being tortured, and it was the whole 4 versus 5 thing. For a moment, Winston saw 5 fingers, and that is that control over somebody's mind. Is if you control what they think and what they see, then you effectively control all of external reality, because external reality is only what our brains process it to be, right? So if you have control over the way that your brain processes, then you have control over everything. For a moment, Winston ignored the dial. He made a violent effort to raise himself into a sitting position and merely succeeded in wrenching his body painfully. "But how can you control matter?" he burst out. "You don't even control the climate or the law of gravity, and there are disease, pain, death." O'Brien silenced him by a movement of the hand. "We control matter because we control the mind. Reality is inside the skull. You'll learn by degrees, Winston. There's nothing that we cannot do. Invisibility, levitation, anything. I could float off this floor like a soap bubble if I wished to. I do not wish to, because the party does not wish it. You must get rid of those 19th century ideas about the laws of nature. We make the laws of nature." "But you do not. You're not even masters of this planet. What about Eurasia and East Asia? You've not conquered them yet." "Unimportant. We shall conquer them when it suits us, and if we do not, what difference would it make? We can shut them out of existence. Oceania is the world." "But the world itself is only a speck of dust, and man is kindly helpless. How long has he been in existence? For millions of years, the earth was uninhabited." "Nonsense. The earth is as old as we are, no older. How can it be older? Nothing exists except through human consciousness." But the rocks are full of the bones of extinct animals, mammoths and mastodons, and enormous reptiles which lived here long before man was ever heard of. Have you ever seen those bones, Winston? Of course not. 19th century biologists invented them. Before man, there was nothing. After man, it could come to an end. There would be nothing. Outside man, there is nothing. But the whole universe is outside us. Look at the stars. Some of them are a million years away. They are out there, out of our reach forever. What are the stars? Said O'Brien indifferently. They are bits of fire a few kilometers away. We could reach them if we wanted to, or we could blot them out. The earth is the center of the universe. The sun and the stars go round it. Winston made another convulsive movement. This time he did not say anything. O'Brien continued as though answering a spoken objection. For certain purposes, of course, this is not true. When we navigate the ocean or when we predict an eclipse, we often find it convenient to assume that the earth goes round the sun, that the stars are millions upon millions of kilometers away. But what of it? Do you suppose it is beyond us to produce a dual system of astronomy? The stars can be near or distant according as we need them. Do you suppose our mathematicians are unequal to that? Have you forgotten doublethink? Winston shrank back upon the bed. Whatever he said, the swift answer crushed him like a bludgeon, and yet he knew that he was in the right. The belief that nothing exists outside your own mind, surely there must be some way of demonstrating that it was false. Had it not been exposed long ago as a fallacy, there was even a name for it, which he had forgotten. A faint smile twitched the corners of O'Brien's mouth as he looked down at him. I told you, Winston, that metaphysics is not your strong point. The word you're trying to think of is solipsism. But you're mistaken. This is not solipsism. Collective solipsism, if you like. But this is a different thing. In fact, the opposite thing. All this is a digression, he added in a different tone. The real power, the power we have to fight for night and day, is not power over things, but over men. He paused and for a moment assumed again his air of a schoolmaster questioning a promising pupil. How does one man assert his power over another, Winston? Now, I want to go back and talk about this whole back and forth between Winston and O'Brien, because Winston's bringing up some good points. You know, he says, you guys are not in control of matter. You know, I know these things to be certain. There are fossils in the ground. There are stars a million miles away. So what gives you the right to say that you're in control of any of that? And O'Brien is so quick, you know, because he is so into the party, and he's just like, what do you mean? You know, sometimes the party says that the stars are up close, and sometimes the party says they're far away. Why does it matter? Whatever works best for us, that's what it is. And it's so crazy and interesting because, you know, the way O'Brien is, he really believes this. He really believes that if the party comes up tomorrow and says, yeah, the stars, they're like 10 feet off the ground. Like, we could all reach them if we want to. I just don't want you to touch them. O'Brien would be like, yeah, absolutely. And it wouldn't be so much as a belief. It would be something that he knows. You know, it's like going in and actually changing the laws of gravity, the laws of physics, the laws of metaphysics to fit whatever the party says. You're not just changing your belief about them. Like, this goes into this idea that the party is able to actually change those actual laws themselves to fit whatever they want. And of course, Winston is still really struggling with this because he's like, well, you know, because like I said that whatever happens outside of your brain is processed by your brain, and that's how we perceive the world. And so the party really quickly understood that you have to control the brain to control reality. So Winston's like, yeah, but there has to be a way that I can prove that reality exists outside your brain. Because that is what he's holding on to, is that you have to be able to do that. And O'Brien's like, nope, you can't do it. And because he can't prove that reality exists outside your brain, Winston lost the argument, essentially, which is just crazy. And I'm going to pick it up in the next video.